Stanton, Jackie Romanicki, Jerry Freecott, Jay Allard, and myself, so we have a quorum. Our sole order of business tonight is to interview prospective designers for the police station roof project. And up first is Socotec, and as always, if you would please explain to us why we should choose you. And I believe that Mark Zawatsky, who is our, is it clerk of the works, is that the right word?
Construction consultant, I think.
Construction consultant, may lead off with some questions after you make your presentation, so go right ahead.
Thank you, Jack. My name is Jim Russo. This is Andrew Barr. We are the project principals for this project for Socotec. And so we're here tonight to discuss the project and our qualifications. I gave you folks, so it's a PowerPoint presentation. You all have this handout, so jot notes, ask questions if you want to wait to the end or as we're going, however you feel comfortable. So the firm focuses in our division strictly on building envelope and roofing work. As you can see on this screenshot, the types of projects: roof walls, windows, concrete restoration, masonry restoration, waterproofing, parking structures, and structural. And we do everything in-house. So it's investigation, design, bid phase, construction period phase services. We also do commissioning work for Mass School Building Authority and DCAM on these types of projects. The next shot will speak to the org chart. So myself and Andrew, as I mentioned earlier, are firm principals, project manager, project engineer, and principal. We have a structural engineer on board, Wayne Lawson, registered PE. In the Commonwealth, architect Gen Z, another registered architect in the Commonwealth, Rich Gorham, who I think many of you are familiar with from past projects we've worked with you on. He would be the assistant project manager on the project. And then our technicians, we've had 3 technicians assigned to the project, as you see. So the work that we do in our division is strictly roofing and waterproofing, building envelope work, at least 3 million or so square feet a year of roofing. Majority of our work is in the public sector, Chapter 149 projects, so we're very familiar with the procurement laws. Andrew's a registered PE and MCPPO certified. I'm a registered roof consultant, so national registration, professional registration, and also MCPPO certified as well on the procurement side. These next few screenshots, we won't take a lot of time with them, but they'll briefly describe our vast experience in the public sector. So a significant amount of work throughout the Commonwealth, pretty close to 500 buildings now for 80, actually we're close to 90 towns and municipalities throughout the Commonwealth doing this type of work over a significant number of years. It's hard to say that it's over 30 years, but it is, believe it or not. In terms of the experience, so Brookline, a big project several years back, initially looked at 80 buildings for the town of Brookline and cataloged all their roofs. And then subsequent to that, they retained us to stay on board through a house doctor program. And over several years, actually close to almost 2 decades now, we've been doing work as funds become encumbered. We put together a spreadsheet over 20 years in terms of the types of projects they needed to do and the dollar values associated with that. And there were inflators built into that, of course. So since then, we've done 20 buildings, replaced the roofs, and a lot of building envelope work that goes along with that, masonry restoration, window replacement, window sealants, that type of thing. The next shot is Andover. We did very similar type of work for the town of Andover, and we continue to do so to this day. Over 20 buildings for them. And I should mention, these are many different types of roofing systems. So shingle, slate, built up, the low slope flat roofing, EPDM, PVC, every roofing system that's out there we've actually had experience with over the years, including metal and slate roofing as well. Framingham, 14 buildings over the years. Their roofing replacement on their schools, their choice was cold process built-up roofing. So they have a significant amount of that. Belmont, the town of Belmont, over 20 buildings, actually turned out to be 22 at the end. You can see the white membrane, that was a reinforced PVC membrane, that was their system of choice over the years. Way out in Western Mass, 22 buildings for the city of Pittsfield. Actually, that's where I was born and raised, just saying. But that's a long ride out the pike, but they've been a good client, and we actually are finishing a school as we speak on a roof project for them right now. So we're in closeout phase with that project. Not far from here is Canton. We looked at 19 buildings. And so these projects start out where we start out looking at their buildings and catalog them, because they really don't know what kind of roofing systems they have. So we identify it, and then we, as I said earlier, put a spreadsheet together, somewhat of a CIP, a capital improvement program for strictly roofs and building envelope work. So, you know, their funds became encumbered, and they continued to keep us on board, do the whole design, bid, and CA, construction period services. And of course, the two schools in Attleboro that were recently completed a couple of years ago, big shingle replacement jobs. They went very well, even though we were working during COVID times, and we had some issues, but we were there during construction and worked very closely with the contractor during those phases. And I think, as some of you know, we are currently working on the Willett School. I don't have a screenshot of that here now, but that roof replacement project is in design phase, soon to be finished and out to bid, so we can get construction done this season. So,
I think our initial meeting with Skanska is tomorrow morning by Zoom, is it not?
yes, yeah, we have a meet, that's right, Jack, yeah, I talked to Anajet today. So I forwarded the design development submission this afternoon before I came down.
Let me stop you for 1 second. I want the record to reflect that Andrew Acosta has joined us. And is it Pamela? Is that, where do you stand in the nomination process?
I haven't been vetted yet by the city council.
But you've been nominated?
I've tried,
Has,
but, he said maybe June 6th.
Little cheat sheet.
has the mayor sent your name down to the
Yes.
council? Okay.
Yes.
Given the fact that the mayor has done that, feel free to come up and sit at the table with us. You can't vote until you're sworn in, but please sit at the table with us. So, sorry for the interruption, but go ahead.
No problem at all, thank you.
Her one too.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Even though she can't vote, we'll let her ask questions.
This is a little cheat sheet.
Yes.
You can follow.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So into the nitty-gritty of the project at the police department, police station headquarters. So there are 4 roof areas. The left is an overhead screenshot. And you can see, even from looking up in the air, they're visibly not looking very good. The left-hand side, the right-hand picture shows the left-hand side as a close-up where all the antennas are. That's an adhered EPDM, black EPDM roof system. A lot of deficient conditions there, which I'm sure you're very aware of. The total square foot on the job is almost 7,300 square feet, spread out amongst the 4 different roof areas. We realized that the police station, because we've worked on a lot of them, of course, 24/7, 365, and those antennas are not allowed to become disabled during the job. So again, we worked very, very closely. Our specifications are very stringent relative to that. 2 things. One, we do require licensed construction supervisor to be on site on the contractor side during construction to coordinate efforts, even from something simple as material deliveries, to obviously coordinating the efforts with their foremen and their workers, but also to make sure that these antennas are properly secured and lifted while the work is being done. We will end up getting to know who the vendor is that would deal with these, and we put that right in the specification to ensure that The contractor has the point of contact information, and they will be at the pre-construction meeting as well to understand the scope and the milestone schedule. So basically, I'll show you the picture on the next one. On the right-hand side is a stone ballasted EPDM roofing system. So that brownish look is gravel surfacing. You can see that on the upper left-hand corner. So the work is going to be basically replacing the roofing system, the low-slope roofing system, removal and replacement, and going back with a single ply more than likely, but we'll give some options during the design development submission, the first submission of our design, and the associated construction costs with that. We'll meet all the energy code requirements for the installation. You might want to speak a little bit about the new code on that.
Yeah, the new code, it hasn't changed a whole lot in our value. It actually is a little bit more. It's like, because what they did is they actually got rid of, Massachusetts did in its amendments. We always were two charts, an R value chart and a U value chart, and they have chosen to not have the R value one. So the U value basically ends up being, the equivalent R is like 31 1/4 or something like that. So it's a little bit more R value, but pretty negligible. But the other major difference in the new code is it also requires that all roofs be solar ready, okay? And that's within reason, because basically they've established there's a certain direction to the sun that 70% of the roof has to be. There has to be, if there's, right, if there's any shadows or things like that. But basically, it does leave it up to the designer to say whether it's feasible or not, okay? And if it is, but basically, all it means to be solar ready is you have to put the hardboard surfacing on it, and you also have to allow for 5 additional pounds of dead load. That's part of the thing. So that's usually part of where one of the problems.
Is it relevant that we have a feasibility study going for a new public safety building, and we're hoping that within 5 years, we won't need this police station anymore?
Yeah, I mean,
Or does the building code not care about that?
it doesn't really care, but there's probably reasons why it wouldn't work out here anyways. So, from.
Shading factor,
Yeah,
coefficient of shading.
yeah, those types of things, where it just doesn't
Easier
make
out
sense.
on this
Yeah,
job.
yeah. So I don't think that'll be an issue, but I just wanted to bring that up, that it is.
Right.
That it is out there. And that's the new code that just went, or is going into effect soon, so.
So, yeah, we'll have to.
Is that the 10th edition of the
Well,
building code? or-
it's not necessarily the 10th edition of the code, it's the new energy code. Because the energy code, the authority of the new energy, Massachusetts has always been about 3 years behind on whatever the addition of the energy conservation code is. And now they're catching up, and that's what it is. And it's also, they've changed, it's not under the BBR, the Building Regulations and Standard BBRS anymore. It's under an energy group of the Commonwealth of the government. It's really weird. So that it's now, and they don't care about the building code. They care about the energy code. So it is going to cause some potential issues down the road, but as usual, it'll be part of the growing pains of new codes.
Could there be an issue, I'm not saying
Yep.
this roof is specific, but if, say, you're going to work on an old roof and that framing or structure underneath it couldn't support the extra
That's your
load,
That's exactly,
go and
right.
retrofit the
Well,
structure?
no, I mean, and that's where the technologically infeasible out comes.
The clause,
Because
yeah.
because if basically we as designers say, it would cost, here's a $500,000 roof and it's gonna cost $1 million additional to reinforce the roof, it doesn't make any sense to do that. So that's, that's just throwing numbers out
So
there.
there's a provision that allows
Yeah,
you to
there is,
not
there is,
comply,
yeah.
so to speak,
right,
on that.
yeah. It's mainly towards new roofs.
Okay. As long as it's not something that if you decide you want to redo a roof, now you have to,
Yeah,
Yes.
no,
Right.
no.
Right. Because what ends up happening with that is people just decide they're not gonna do their roofs, and then they leak, and the building deteriorates and everything else. So at least they had that provision. The other thing, the other change actually is, I don't know if you remember this from other jobs, up until this edition, it has been that the minimum R value had to be, in this case, R30, that was what it was. So if you had a tapered, if you needed tapered insulation, you'd start with the 5.5 inches, and you'd get up to 8, 10, 14, 16 inches of insulation
Crazy.
in order to have 1/4 inch per foot. They have changed that long time ago, way back when Jim and I were starting in the roof, related business. It was average R value. So what you do is you look at the whole roof, and the average R value had to be, at that time, 20. And now they have come back with that language, because basically what they've realized is that you don't gain anything by having all that insulation. And so they've reinstituted that whole thing. So-
Yeah, so I think, to clarify it a little bit, what Andy's saying is, so at the low points of your roof, which are typically where your roof drains are, right? The old code made you start out at R of 30, and then you'd need to, the trigger point for one of the code issues is positive slope to drain 1/4 inch per foot. So you achieve that by tapered insulation, so you start out flat at 5 inches, and then you go up towards the perimeter, and you do the math. In many cases, you could be 8, 10, 12 inches of insulation, and then that would affect potentially the dimension of your fascia on the outside.
Flashing heights, all sorts of things.
Right, so
yeah.
you would look at your building as an example, and you'd be staring up at it, and you'd say, wow, that used to be, 4 or 5 inches, and now it's 15 inches, and you have to worry about oil canning of the sheet metal and all sorts of issues, and flashing height issues as
Will
well.
this new building need scuppers, or will this need scuppers added?
So we'll look at that, yeah, definitely, Mark, we'll look at that, because you do need to have, we'll do the drain size calculations, but overflow scuppers, through wall scuppers
And
may
the
be
RFQ
required.
also identified that the existing roof drains need to be replaced or lined,
Right.
so that's going to diminish the ID.
Mark, could
Well-
you keep your
Yeah,
voice up so
so-
us old people over here can hear you?
Sure. I asked about scuppers and roof drains, and the
Yeah, I
fact
heard
that
the
the roof
beginning.
drains need to be either replaced or lined. It was identified as a deficient item within the investigation.
Right. Yeah, so regarding that, and that's a very good point, we don't want to reduce the inside diameter, the ID of the drain pipe, if at all possible. And so the way you reduce it is you put an insert drain in, and so then it effectively reduces that ID, and then the flow doesn't work properly, type of thing typically. And you have backups and blah, blah, blah. So we don't like that, we don't go that route. We end up replacing the drain ball, putting an extension on with it, so that you maintain that inside diameter and get the flow to
Right,
go.
and we also have the building edge and the flashing,
Yep.
which isn't going to really support building up. So we've got
Right.
a number of challenges on this low roof.
Yeah, no, without a doubt, absolutely, yeah. We look at all that, we take that all into consideration during the design effort, absolutely. Also, another part of our specifications, we do require them to snake the drains twice, so once at the beginning of the job, to make sure that we have free flow, and if we don't have free flow, we want to know where that is and identify it, so that early on in the process, if we have to go inside and open up a column or whatever the case may be, hopefully not, but we've had to do that, or sometimes we'll camera the drains too, to see where the obstruction is. But, you have to cut it out and replace the vertical.
Are you planning on using, if selected, the Russo bar specifications or the Socotec specifications?
So they are all now Socotec specifications, so the Russo bar specifications have been implemented in this.
It is the typical Russo bar
Yeah.
specification, though.
Right, yeah, absolutely. That's a great question.
Yeah, we haven't heard that one yet.
That's a good question. Yeah, our specs are very job-specific, as you probably well know. And, yes, so we've begun that process, and we're very far along with Socotec in terms of meshing all our specifications together so that we have universal specifications, universal detailing and title block and everything. So it's very transparent. You won't notice a difference at all.
We're running out of time. I don't know how much.
Yep, no worries.
We're almost done.
We're almost done. So, and then the next phase of the work is what we would call the non-roofing work or the building envelope work. So sealant replacement, a lot of control joints, cracked and deteriorated sealant. Masonry restoration, as you can see, something happened here, not sure what, but, obviously freeze thaw popped all those brick off, so we need to deal with that. And as I understand it, right now, you have a total project budget cost of somewhere between 500 and 750, and so the thinking process early on is to do a base bid, alternate bid scenario where the roof is the base bid, and then the remaining non-roofing building envelope work is the alternate bid. Obviously, we'll know more once we get involved during the design effort and we do all our test cuts and our pull tests and all the field work, and we'll run a detailed construction cost estimate in a nice Excel spreadsheet and show you the values there. And then depending on the values, we can make that decision collectively, obviously, if in fact we want to go that route or just roll it all in as to.
Who do you use for your destructive test cuts?
It depends, like, local contractors typically is who we'll use, to assist us during that endeavor, whether it be roofing and/or masonry contractors.
Change order percentage on you've done hundreds, if not thousands, of these projects. They're existing buildings, all sorts of concealed, tricky conditions. What can we expect in terms of change order percentage as a percentage of the base contract?
Sure, great question. So we try and anticipate deteriorated conditions up front, and we build it into our specifications. And where do we have those? Typically, it will be at roof decks, so deteriorated roof deck. On steel roof deck, you would have three different things. You'd have total replacement of steel deck, so we establish a bid quantity for that. And then on the contract document forms, on the proposal form, bid form, the contractor will fill in the blank for an add or a deduct. Also plating over with Galvy, and then applying like a Rust-Oleum type of a paint to the steel. Wood blockage, so we'll come up with a linear foot of wood blockage that's going to be deteriorated because it's been sitting in water for a while type of thing. So we'll, again, same kind of thing, linear board footage, and add or deduct
I
price.
understand the unit price process and mechanism.
Yeah.
As a percentage of the original
So
contract.
percentage is, believe it or not, on many of our projects, we end up having deduct change orders. That's why I was kind of going through that long-winded process, sorry. Because we balance them at the end of the job, and we end up with a deduct because we're very conservative with our estimates. Unforeseen conditions, if something crazy kooky happens, you have to deal with it in the field, and we do. Our percentages are pretty low, typically. I mean, on a $500,000 job, you're not going to get a 10% change order of $50,000. You're not going to get a 5% change order for $25,000. You're going to be somewhere between, 0 or negative if we do deduct, and maybe up to 4 or 5%, maybe, is historically. Because really, you think about it on the roofing jobs, those are the items that I described earlier are the trigger points of where you end up having adds or deducts.
If this is an EPDM 060 replacement roof, very similar to the standard typical product that's on top of this building and many others, with insulation and solar readiness and all the board, any supply chain concerns or issues that would impact the completion of this project in this calendar year?
No. That's my short answer.
And if I can piggyback on that, what do you see as the timeline for this job?
So we do have a screenshot of that. If you'd like, we can jump to it, and here it is. So, thinking you guys are going to make a pretty timely decision. And so this would be a June job for us in terms of getting all the field work and all the data calculations together and getting you the submission. And then early July, have a meeting. A couple weeks later, have a submission for the 100% CD, and then a quick design review meeting, and then out to bid. Bids due late August, early September at the latest.
Right after Labor Day.
Yep. And again, we can compress that schedule.
Well, the timeline is going to be impacted by municipal building
Yeah,
commission
exactly.
meetings and
Right.
Their review and approval to
Without a
enable you
doubt.
to move
Right.
forward.
Right.
The other thing that is generally delayed is the hazmat test timeframe. In order to, you're going to have to bring in someone to do the destructive testing, take your samples, send them off to the lab, and get those results.
That's pretty quick, to be honest with you.
Yeah, we get,
Okay, last project with your firm,
Yeah.
it took 2+ weeks and was impactful.
Okay.
But hopefully we can do better.
Which job was that?
It was Socotec's fire station.
Oh, that's not my firm, no. I'm teasing.
So we usually
Yeah,
have.
I'm not
twen-
certain why it took you that
Yeah,
long.
we typically have
because-
24-hour
Well,
turnarounds
it didn't take
on it.
us that long.
No, why it took them that
Anyway.
long.
So,
You're
Why
saying,
you asked
you're
that
saying
question?
it's not Arno, it's Jim and Andy?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
We do the just so that you know, in the first phase, design, development, investigation phase, Mark, we do the test, we take the samples and send them to a lab, and within 24 hours, we have the results. So I'm not sure why it
Yeah.
took 2 weeks, but,
Okay.
yeah,
And so you think, though, that before the first of the year, we'll be finished with this?
oh, yeah,
project?
oh, absolutely. Yeah, no
And-
supply chain issues.
And the other thing to keep in mind is that Mason, we have how much? 250, 285?
Sorry, I don't have that number on me right now. I'll have to get back to you.
Well, we do not have enough money.
Yeah.
We have enough money to hire you, but we don't have enough money, I believe, based on what Mark has told us. So at some point early on in the process, we are going to need to understand what the real budget is.
Yep.
Because we're gonna have to ask the municipal council for some more money.
Mhm.
And I don't know, Mason and I are meeting tomorrow to go over everything going on with the building commission, but one of the things I did want to talk to him about was whether we can ask for some free cash to supplement this before June 30th, or whether this has to go to some sort of a bond issue. And that could impact the timing of this project. And so, the other thing I was wondering about was, we're obviously working in a highly busy area. Will the contractor need a laydown area? Will we be able to physically accomplish this without, evicting the police officers' cars from the site? Any thoughts on that?
Yes, that's a good question too, Jack. So we'll have to definitely work very closely with you guys during the design effort. So we'll develop a site plan, and then during one of the design review meetings, we'll sit down and talk about the laydown areas and visit at the site and figure that plan out.
Typically, they'll stock right directly onto the roof from an insulation and membrane. I think that, and I mean, we've worked on both fire stations and police stations that are, 24-hour things. And been able, I mean, we did a bunch of work in Brookline at their police station, which literally, you went in the back and it was triple, they've stacked all the cars and everything. And
Just did 4 in Boston.
yeah, I mean, and it's,
Very tight site.
and the contractors understand that they don't have any choice but to work with.
Andy's right, most of the material will be hoisted
Yeah,
up
they'll go
onto
right
the
up onto
roof
the roof.
and stocked up there.
Yeah,
But you will need a dumpster.
Yeah,
Or,
right.
a dump truck.
Yeah.
But that's all very manageable.
and if it's necessary to tell them that that you can't have anything overnight, so they have to have live loading, and unloading, I mean, they can do that.
the truck to remove all the ballast from the
Yeah,
loader.
right, so that's the first thing they'll
all gonna
do
be
is come
day
and
after.
vacuum
So
that
that'll be
off.
the vacuum
Yeah,
guy come
yeah.
first.
That's a noisy job, but once it's done, it's
We
good.
can
Any
find,
other
we can
questions?
find a way to yes them
Yeah.
on
Do you have
that.
any other questions, Mark?
Nothing substantive. They've answered the vast
Anybody
majority.
on the commission have any questions? Okay, I think that, do you have anything else you want to say to us?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Why
Can run
you?
through the in conclusion.
One
So the in conclusion, we'll kind of speak it. So we have the staffing commitments. We have the level of experience in years under the background of personnel. One thing we didn't talk a little bit about is continuous improvement. So to maintain our professional registrations, we have to get a certain number of CEUs on an annual basis, and we're very current with that. We stay up with that, and we also speak to manufacturers and distributors reps constantly about supply chain issues that you were talking about availability of products, about any products that are problematic or are not in stock and things of that nature. So anything that we recommend will definitely be on top of it. Our specs, as I said earlier, are very detailed. I don't think you'll find many specifiers that require a licensed construction supervisor on a roof job. It might be overkill, some would say, but we disagree for a lot of reasons. And, everything's very detailed. During construction, we're on site very often and maintaining a level of communication with the contractor. Nobody's butting heads like the old days. It's more of a partnership, so to speak, and dealing with issues right there on the roof. If there's an issue, you're not going to have to wait for us to go back to the office and have a Monday morning staff meeting to discuss it. Everybody has a cell phone. take photos, do videos, we deal with it right then and there. Get you pricing if there is a change order involved, and go through the proper channels to ensure that it's acceptable, you know, through the RFI process, shop drawing submittal, all that type of thing. And as, in conclusion, you know, we're definitely an established firm. You know, Russo Bar was very established. When we sold and went to Socotec, they're very established. They're much larger, of course, but they're very established. They're very supportive. They have a lot of resources within not only Boston, but also the main office in New York, if we ever need to tap into it. Not that I think we will, but it's there if we need it. And, you know, we only go after jobs, you've heard us say this well before, that makes sense for us. We don't want to overwhelm the staff. We don't want to go after everything that's in the Central Register. You know, we enjoy working with the city of Attleboro and the Attleboro Public Schools, and we have a great relationship, and we'd like to continue along that line.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
If the next one is outside that door, you can send them in.
Tell them to go home.
Yeah, they can go.
Yeah, tell them the meeting was canceled.
There's some technical difficulties in there. It's really not good, guys.
Yeah.
Right, well,
Thank you for your time, everyone.
And thank you for your time. And we have representatives from Rouse Architects. So introduce yourselves and tell us why we should hire you for this job, and we may have a few questions for you at the end.
Okay.
Thank you very much for
And you
inviting
don't
us
have
here
to
this evening.
stand. It's okay.
My name is Ted Rouse. I'm president of Rouse Architects. With me is Jim Partridge, who is a long associate of the firm. He's the project architect. We have 38 years of experience in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. I am a resident of Rehoboth. I have lived there for the last 47 years. I've been involved in a lot of the town facilities over the past 20 years. I've been involved in trying to build a new police station, a new fire station, a new town hall. You name it, we've gone through every one of them in different variations. We didn't get a new police station, but we ended up getting trailers that were moved from Westport, and we relocated them to Rehoboth. and please call Chief Trombetta up. I know he'll speak very highly of the work that we've done. We do a lot of house doctor contracts. House doctor contracts they're on for a period of time for a dollar amount, whether it be $1 million worth of fees or $2 million worth of fees, whatever the limit is by the different agencies. And we're working with the Middlesex Sheriff's Department, Plymouth Sheriff's Department, the Barnstable Sheriff's Department. We were working with them for 5 years. We had to give it up for 2, and they retained us again because of our performance that we did for the first 5 years. We're working with the U.S. Coast Guard, very similar situation. We've had a contract with them for 5 years. We were not involved for 2 years, and then they retained us again for another 5 years. We've had 10 years of experience of working with them on projects, on basically envelopes of all of their facilities from Delaware up to Maine. A very demanding schedule that they work with, and we've completed every one of them. That's why we were repeat architects for them. We do a lot of repeat work for most of our clients. We've been working with the Rhode Island Judiciary since 2004, and we're working on all of their facilities throughout Rhode Island. New construction, renovation of all the historic courtrooms throughout the state. We've been involved in a number of roof projects. We've been involved in a TPO roof, an EPDM roof, a built-up roof system. We have a roof consultant, Andy Hool, that we've retained for this project. Andy will be involved with us from beginning to end. But his prominence is basically assisting us on looking at the existing conditions of what you have here, and then evaluating different roof systems, and then involved in the technical writing of the specifications. Andy could not be here tonight, but we've worked with him on the past on a number of projects. Jim just finished a project for the Newport Police Station, which is very similar to yours, where it's an occupied facility. I'll let you talk.
Yeah, we basically replaced an existing EPDM membrane roof system, fully adhered, and it would also include asphalt shingles because it was kind of a hip situation.
Voice up because
Excuse me.
I'm ancient, and
Sorry.
there was a Rolling Stones concert in 1989 that
Never
affected my
never
hearing.
came back, huh? So we, for the Newport Police Project, we replaced an asphalt shingle roof because it was kind of a pitched hip situation, and on the flat roof, we had an EPDM roof that was beyond its life expectancy, so we replaced that. We also encountered when we stripped off the deck, down to the deck, we had to replace some of the deck panels, which were plywood in nature for the asphalt shingles. To help alleviate change orders, we actually had the contractor carry unit price for deck replacement where needed. So we already knew what the price was built into their bid documents, so we could manage the replacement of the decks where needed. And we also obviously brought a structural engineer that was involved with that to analyze to make sure that we were replacing what we need, how we need it relative to conditions that we found after we had taken the old roof off because of dry rot situation primarily is what the main cause was. Similar kind of flashing details relative to we had to make sure that the antennas and repeaters that were on the roof, we had to make sure that they were still active while we were doing all of the new and demolition work that was involved for that project. So we worked carefully with the police department in terms of areas of work, so we had an actually phased project, even though it was a smaller project, just so that the inhabitants could make preparations to either relocate temporarily on sort of like a weekly basis, and so we could get the work done as efficiently as we possibly could.
We do a lot of work with housing authorities. Housing authorities basically all over New England. The latest thing on the housing authorities is they rent out their roof spaces to a lot of the telephone and communication people. They have their towers and their licenses up there. We've been involved in 4 or 5 high-rises where we've gone in and We've put together a bid package for a communication team to come out, evaluate what we have to do in order to remove all of the communication equipment on the roof, have the roofing contractor carry that communication consultant on their team, and then perform the work. They work together, the communication people would lift up all the cable trays, move everything out of the way, the roofer would come in and finish off his areas, communication consultant would come back in and reset everything. And they're responsible for all of the diagramming of the communication towers and all of the equipment. We've done this on, like I say, 4 or 5 high-rises just recently. I say we do a lot of repeat work for a lot of clients. What we would plan on doing with your facility, since the existing documents are very sketchy of what you have, we'll come out, we'll field measure, we'll develop existing condition documents, working with our roofing consultant. We'll come out with a roofing contractor and have test samples done of all the different roofs and the different flashing materials. We'll send them out to make sure if there's any hazardous materials, we know about it up front.
What's the timeline for that in order to do, from the time that you're initially engaged to the time that you have a contractor on site, doing your test cuts, taking your hazardous material sampling, and for those results to come
We would
back?
start the first week that we were selected,
And how long does it take to get the test results back?
usually within a week.
Okay.
At the most.
I think noticing some of the things that were at the walkthrough, that you've got a lot of drain problems with sand and so forth. We would recommend that all the drains be either camera looked at or through a dye test to make sure that they're all working properly, they're all flushed out. Examine what the condition of the cast iron piping is. We're finding in a lot of areas, the cast iron piping, especially in the horizontal position, after 50 years become all pitted, and then they got to be replaced. So it's something that, we look at this stuff now so that we're aware of it, and we make sure that's included, or we have unit prices so that we can deal with it during construction. Our work, our construction documents, you won't find another firm in this area that can compete with us as far as how we detail the documents, make sure that they're very thorough. When we go out to bid, our change order systems are slim to none. There might be some hidden stuff or unit prices that we have to utilize, but it's usually well within 5% of whatever their bid contract is, or 0. I think Mark can attest to that. He's known us for quite a few years, and he knows our documents, I think, very well.
Could you talk a little bit about the code analysis that you'll undertake and the changes to the code that have recently been implemented?
You want to talk the new code?
Yeah, so right now, I believe the Massachusetts is following the IBC 2015 based, the current code, which is the 9th edition of the Commonwealth Building Code, adopted the 2015 IBC code. And obviously, what we're looking at, hopefully fairly soon, is the 10th edition, which would adopt the 2021 building codes, which would affect, how it would affect the project would be the amount of insulation that would be put on the roof. We would have to follow the latest code requirements relative to continuous insulation on the deck surface. So right now, based on the 2015, if you did a re-roofing job without updating it, it would probably be about an R26, just short of 26. The latest codes is probably more pushing towards an R30 for rigid insulation on the roof above the deck.
I think the new ones are 45.
For the attics, yes.
Yeah.
But on top of the roof deck, which is what we're going to be doing, it would be roughly about an R30.
Okay. Question. If you're selected and as you go through this aggressive design timeline and we go out to procurement, do you expect that we could be able to complete this project this calendar year, or do you anticipate any type of supply chain issues with material availability or labor?
No, we work with a number of roofing companies. The supply chain has actually caught back up to where it used to be. Same thing with manpower.
Yeah, originally it was like adhesives, insulation, but a lot of that has kind of turned around in recent months relative to being able to get materials.
We finished a 26,000 square foot roof, EPDM roof, for the Department of Youth Services up in, area outside of Boston.
Yeah.
And that was started at the beginning of the COVID period, and it became a real issue. The roofing contractor could not get insulation. He went all over the country, and what we ended up doing was, we based it on a Firestone roofing system, and we then put in an evaluation for 2 others. The roofing contractor came back with a 4th one that could meet the timeline and also meet the tapered insulation. So we really, complimented him for doing so, but we got it done on time. There was a slight increase from the manufacturer of the insulation, but it was very reasonable.
During construction, who will make the intermittent on-site observations? Will that be one of you two, or will that be Elizabeth Jackson? And can you guarantee or certify that you will provide an architect to be able to make those on-site observations and give responses to the contractor to any issues that arise?
I'm going to take on that role because I live right down the street. I live just down from Briggs Corner. And I can stop here, twice a week. We do field reports whenever we're here. We have a meeting with the contractor. We have a kickoff meeting. Once the project gets underway, we'll have another site meeting with them, with representatives from the owner. We take minutes of whatever the meetings are. We have a website that we produce that we have give you access to. You can go on to the site and you can read the minutes of the meetings. If you can attend the meetings, all well and good. If you can't, you'll have a copy that you'll be able to open up on a website, so you'll be able to follow the construction right through. You'll be able to see any issues that come up on a weekly basis.
This is obviously an occupied site. Do you anticipate any issues with a laydown area or providing space for the contractor, given the fact that the police officers park their private cars on the lot?
There's going to have to be a location near the building that will have to be a dumpster. As far as the materials itself, they either might find another location nearby, utilize that as a storage trailer, or they might bring in the materials on a daily basis. It's not a big roof to be done. But there will be dumpsters right next to the building, at least one dumpster, that will probably be removed daily.
We would have to coordinate some area, a couple of parking space type of area, just to be able to use it as sort of their lay down or pick points to get the materials up onto the roof. So we would obviously have to work with the police department and coordinate that in terms of site logistics.
So you would, during the design phase, meet with the police chief and his representatives in order to develop a site logistics plan and then incorporate that into the contract documents?
Absolutely.
That's right.
Okay.
It seems that it's not just the roof that's the problem here. Have you taken a look at the walls of the building?
Yes, you need a major masonry restoration.
Especially that main stair with the exterior walls. Whatever was holding the brick, I'm kind of surprised that it may be rusted through over the years, and water got behind, the backside of the face brick from the back substrate. So we would have to kind of redo all of the connections for the brick that we would put back in its place to make sure that it's done correctly. Also, getting into mortar joints and sealant joints, especially when you got different materials from either stone and or concrete versus brick, you have to kind of recognize that as sort of two different materials. So it's really important to make sure that you get the right material that kind of works with the two different materials in terms of expansion and contraction moving forward. So you don't have the cracking of mortar against either concrete or brick in some cases.
Our RFP, I think, disclosed a probable budgetary amount. Did you take a look at that? Did you have an opinion on that?
Not on the masonry, no.
Well, it was a overall project budget that was in the range, that had a range, a low and a high range, and the question.
750?
500 to 700
Yeah,
was
yeah.
our expectation. So are you able to give us any kind of order of magnitude in this day and age, what a removal of an existing EPDM roof with insulation down to the deck, vapor barrier, new insulation per code, new EPDM roof, and new caps and roofing project in terms of a cost per square foot? Understanding it's about a 7,300 square foot roof area?
I would say that you were probably talking in the area of somewhere between $25 and $30 a square foot.
So $250,000,
Yeah,
30 times
$225,
seven.
$250 for the roof.
Okay, thank you.
I think we would have to take a closer look at what the remediation is going to be relative to the masonry that's involved.
Right, and also
Because-
any hazmat.
Right, because some of the caulking could be asbestos
Oh,
even.
it probably is.
Yeah.
I would suggest that it be done as two separate projects. The roof project is, prime, to get that done and get it all sealed and before the winter, and the masonry project to be a separate bid project altogether.
Well, how would you handle that at the roof edge where we have concrete with mortar joints? Would that be removed and built up and then capped with new aluminum by the roofer? Or would you have that section handled by the mason? It really, I think, probably has.
It meshes together, and I think the roofing contractor would probably have to sub out that portion of the masonry work.
Right.
But for doing the rest of the building, I think it's a separate project.
So, okay, got it.
I've asked all the questions that I had. Any more, Mark, that you have?
Yeah, no, substantively, they've answered all the questions. We know about the timeline, we know about the challenges, and we know, so question. Understand, I mean, within the four corners of your response, you indicated your timeline. We've got a 49-day design timeline from the time that we sign you up, which includes destructive testing, the test results, the handling of any hazmat that we encounter, design development, and, 100% CDs with all complete, conformed, concise, comprehensive project manual. Do you have any issues or challenges with a 49, 50-day window in order to accomplish all the design elements of this project?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Okay, any questions from commission members?
I think one thing I want to, point out again is we're local, we're very local. We've got offices in East Providence and in Foxborough. You're not dealing with the Boston market. Any issues that come up, nobody punches a time clock in my office. If there's an issue here during construction, we're here on the spot. And like I say, being so close, I can stop in here easily, twice a week or more if it's necessary.
Okay. Anything else you wish to add? You don't have to.
We
So-
would, look forward working with the city of Attleboro and the police department. We'd like to develop a long-term relationship with you on other projects.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time. We are probably going to make a recommendation to the mayor tonight. So if you call tomorrow and ask for Mason or Molly, they may have the answer for you.
Great,
Thank you.
appreciate it very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too.
Thank you.
Nice seeing you.
Have you swallowed, Mark?
I have. I'm good.
So are you ready to share your thoughts with us?
Well, sure. So, first off, I'd like to say that I believe that both firms were fully responsive to the RFQ. They checked off all the boxes regarding the comparative evaluation criteria that was identified within the RFQ. It's really not, what we're doing is we're comparing one firm to the other. We're looking at which firm was superior or adequate, or however you want to score them, in terms of A, related experience, B, quality control, and quality assurance, public sector experience, Chapter 149 and Mass General Laws, the team, and then finally their work plan, project approach, and their, how they plan on executing their responsibilities. So I think both firms are fully qualified. They're all licensed architects. Socotec is a larger firm. They acquired Russo Bar. They've done Russo Bar, the two gentlemen that were here this evening, have done prior work for the city. I've worked on behalf of the city of Attleboro with Socotec on 2 projects now, and I've worked with Rouse on several prior projects, so I want full disclosure. They mentioned that I was going to. So I've seen their work. I know their project manual, how they're conformed, concise, and comprehensive in terms of putting all the pieces together and how they mitigate claims and protect the owner's interests. In terms of comparative, it's a coin toss. You've worked with Socotec, you haven't worked with them. Both firms, I believe, can complete the project within the required timeline. So it's really, what's your gut feeling? Who's a better communicator? Who do you think is in the best interest of the city of Attleboro? Who do you think has a better chance of performing? Socotec is performing many of the services with in-house. Their structural engineer is in-house, but they're subbing out the hazardous material, which they don't do. And they are also, but they write their own specifications. They're subbing out the structural as well as the hazmat. But one of their firms is an MBE or a WBE, I can't recall. I think it's an MBE. So Socotec had no M or WBE participation. I know it's not an absolute requirement of the city, to the best of my knowledge. And because this isn't a state-funded project, we're not subject to those threshold requirements. So I don't know how you would feel about, one firm having MBE versus another firm that did not. Other than that, I think either firm will execute with velocity and give us an acceptable project in accordance with the project manual.
Okay, thank you. Jerry?
I feel the same way. It's not a big job again. It's something that they can easily handle. I know Russo Bar has done a lot of work for the city. Maybe it's time to try somebody else beside and to have a second company lined up that might work out and be available for future work.
Jay?
I really agree a lot with Jerry. I think he hit a nail on the head of, we seem to do a lot with Socotec, which is great, but having someone as local as they are, more than as capable at least, and maybe a little new blood wouldn't maybe probably be a bad idea in this case, as it is a smaller project. I mean, might be a nice time to try something a little different.
Ed?
Socotec did the 2 middle schools.
Yes.
Did Rouse do any?
We have not hired Rouse, to my knowledge, ever. Socotec, when it was Russo Bar, has done more than just, the 2 middle schools.
Now, did we have real good results with them doing the middle schools, the roofs?
Outstanding.
Outstanding. Well, my feeling was that they were very closely matched, and one is a proven provider of successfully providing services that we were looking for. The other isn't. So I would go with the one that we know.
Okay. Andrew?
Like everyone said, in terms of both being able to do the work, initially I didn't think Rouse was giving the greatest presentation, but when they started speaking and giving their answers, they were in line with what Socotec had to say. The only thing that I didn't like about what Rouse said was being able to do the masonry work wanting to pull that apart, so I don't know how involved they'd want to be with putting the specs together and piecing that all. Was that all part of the RFP?
Actually, okay, so we did indicate within the four corners of the RFQ that because of budgetary constraints and because of timing, that we were looking to create alternates. And so their suggestion was to handle it as two separate prime contracts. Let a roofer do roofing, let a mason do masonry, except for where they come together. I think that was a project strategy and a project approach so that you didn't have a roofer trying to oversee or manage a mason doing masonry work, because neither of these two firms are general contractors. If I may, just for a second, I'm going to refer to our experience in lesson observed, lesson learned. We hired a flooring contractor at the Hyman Fine and Hill Roberts School to be a general contractor. They fell down considerably in terms of fulfilling their administrative
You almost
requirements.
said something that Jim would have had to bleep
No,
out there.
I wasn't going to do that.
5-second
But
delay,
they
right?
fell down on fulfilling administrative responsibilities. Here, if we're going to hire a roofer to oversee and have a subcontractor, I would similarly, I get the vibe that they're concerned about having a roofer oversee a mason. So it's not a bad idea. I don't know about two primes, but I'm just saying, that's a project approach, and we can talk about that if you select them. The second point, and I apologize, I'm taking your time. The MBC's charge here is to comparatively review presentation 1 to presentation 2 and decide who, on a comparative evaluation basis, is the best candidate for the city and for this project. My concern is it's not about fresh blood versus known entity. It's not about this or that. It's really trying to drill down into the nuance of who is, from a comparative standpoint, from those 5 criteria, who is the, who provided a superior response and would be in the best interest of the city. Now, maybe these other factors are fully involved and are taken into account, but I just want you to be making the decision based on the evaluation criteria that was outlined within the RFQ. That's an important distinction.
So if they split it apart with 2 contracts, who would they have a general contractor supervising a?
Well, it almost seemed like they were.
How would their approach
Yeah.
come together without a roofer being the general contractor?
Andrew, it seemed to me like what they were saying was that we do the
Don't
roof
do it
this
now.
fall. What?
I thought they were saying like, don't do it now.
Yeah, do the roof this fall and then do the masonry in the spring. That's what I heard them say.
I wasn't sure.
Well, he didn't say spring, but he kind of implied that.
Yeah.
Right. Some portions of the work will need to mesh into it. I mean, the front entrance of the building is leaking considerably. The chief's office is leaking. One elevation has significant masonry issues. They're going to have to address that. They're not saying they won't do it, that they can't do it, that they don't have experience doing it. They were just saying, and because of, conversation about budgetary concerns and because of what it stated in the RFQ, I think they were being responsive to the concerns of the owner and the city that basically said, we don't know exactly how to do this. And I think if you were to select them in your evaluative criteria, then we could work out the details of what would be included in this phase and what would be deferred, or we would say, no, that we don't like that, we want it all included. But first we have to certify the availability of funds. I mean, if this is going to cost, between all the soft costs and between the hard costs, you're up around that $500,000 already. If you add the masonry in there, all of a sudden, first off, you never want to exceed $1.5 million, because then that's going to kick in a whole different set of criteria with the state or Commonwealth. So the second thing is, how do we right-size this project to your budget? How do we get the building stop leaking?
We can't segment either.
I understand.
So
Go ahead.
they were
Andy.
saying, budgetary $225,000. And then Russo Bar was saying, yeah, more in the close to 700,000.
Well, they didn't say specifically.
They gave the range, though.
Well, that was our range listed in here, and that was an
Yeah.
overall project budget, not a roof cost
Okay.
or a
So is
masonry.
there,
They didn't spell it out.
still thinking about it, because I'm not,
Okay.
I don't see how I just want to make sure that the masonry gets done and doesn't cost the city additional money because of the
Right.
way they
Having
handled it.
having two bids and two general contractors, I think is going to increase the cost.
And that was my
So,
suspicion, that anytime you bring another,
and we
And-
also know that from the fire station roof, the roof was done, and then the fire chief thought it was leaking, and it turns out it's not
The
the.
masonry.
It's the masonry. And so you get the new roof on, you put the interior in good shape, and then you get more water in through the walls. Now you're redoing that kind of
Right,
work.
the whole idea of this masonry repair or masonry restoration, or, everybody's showing the failed walkway. The walkway isn't part of the leaking building. The masonry issues on the building, once you get past the roof cap, potentially are relatively de minimis. They're small. So just, less than 10% of the existing masonry joints, the grout, the mortar, all would need to be raked out and repaired. It's really the roof cap that's allowing water to get in, get behind the walls, and causing leakage and spalling and adverse infiltration. So I believe that once there is a really good understanding on the part of whoever you select, handling the mason repairs that are not part of the building leakage can either be done as part of it or as an alternate, or it could be done separately by a small contractor to the city. Not going to, dictate that, but I think that the building can be done in a single project effort, and I would certainly support that concept. And the reason that the whole masonry was put in here was because of the lesson observed, lesson learned from the fire department.
Jackie, you have any thoughts?
Again, I think both of them were pretty much equal across the board. The one thing I did notice that Russo Bar had talked about was the solar ready. And it was not brought up when you did question the changes in the rules and the code. They didn't bring up the solar ready part, which kind of concerned me that, okay, tell me you're knowledgeable about all of this. And they didn't. Regardless, their timelines, in both cases, the timelines are the same. The middle of December, be finished. So before the end of the year. Fingers crossed, I know. So it's kind of a toss-up.
Pamela, you have any thoughts?
I feel a little more confident that Socotec could stay within the boundaries of the total project, of the total amount on the project, than perhaps Rusotec. I have a related question. Can I ask?
You can ask anything.
Do you have a total rehab cost that you would not exceed, that you would say it's not worth repairing this building?
We have no choice. We must keep this building in operation until we can replace it.
Oh, you have no choice.
And I would say that this is an important public asset that you should and must maintain. It's in the City Hall complex, and regardless of whatever this building is, it will be used by the city over many generations to come, in my opinion.
Thank you for clearing that up, because I thought I should ask the question. Just in case, because the masonry repairs are kind of dubious, right? You don't really know what's going on there for sure.
Yeah, it's not that bad.
Jay?
I have a question for you. So, just so I understand the numbers here. So, masonry is, you said there was probably 5 or 10% of masonry was,
Of the existing
of the
building.
existing repair would not be a portion of the, would not, 5 to 10% would not,
Let's say there was $100,000 of masonry and
Yeah.
$250,000 of roofing. It's a 350,000 plus soft
But-
cost for them, for me.
But how much of that masonry specifically pertains to the roof repair of that 100,000?
Okay, well, the building is leaking,
Yeah.
not just from the roof.
No, I understand, but of the masonry itself, like we talked about the stairs.
Yep.
The masonry itself, overall, how much of that masonry pertains specifically to repairing for the roof, for water leaking?
Okay. I will answer your question,
Yeah.
but I get concerned because buildings don't leak only from the roof, they leak from building envelope issues. I'm a building envelope guy, so again, I'm the guy that added the scope of the masonry repairs because I didn't want the police chief, to give me a ticket and pull me over because I didn't address the leak in his office. So I would say that, 90% of the building leakage occurs from the roof edge. Once we solve that and stop getting water from coming down in between the roof and the back of the brick, and at that cap area, the rest of it is just mortar and such. So I would say that the vast majority of the roof issues are at the water infiltration is at the roof cap,
But,
at the edge between masonry and,
so what I'm trying to get at is, Rouse wanted to kind of exclude the masonry out of the roof. And, okay, I understand, I agree with actually separating it, long and short, but however, I don't wanna exclude, the masonry, but then they do 95% of the masonry repair pertains to the roof, only leaving, 5% of masonry repair left, which is the stairs or the steps or whatnot.
right, well, that
To
stairs.
me, that's kind of like, why bother excluding it at that point?
Well, because those stairs and that step and that whole wall, the railing system is now failed, and it's all rotted out and rusted. So I gotta tell you, that area, even if we don't exclude it, make it an alternate. And make it an add alternate or a deduct alternate. But that area itself, that's going to be expensive. That could be a couple $100,000.
But that's also the only entrance for the public into the police station, too,
Right,
correct?
the entrance isn't gonna fall down, but you do need to replace the railing, fix the railing, and this is a aesthetic thing that will become structural with more water, with more freeze thaw, with more spalling, et cetera. So yes, you do have to take care of it, but it's not impacting the longevity and the asset of the building. It's really just impacting the walkway, the
But
deck.
if it's going to be a number of years that this building remains in service,
Just do it.
not fixing the front entrance does not seem appropriate to me. But we obviously need to get some professional advice on the scope and cost of the work. And then we're going to have to go to the mayor and to the council to fund whatever that may be, correct?
Yes, and, the possibility exists. It can all be done in a single phase, or you can pull it out and say, well, we can't afford this phase right now. We're going to defer that, and we'll put that into the next CIP or the next year's budget, and just bring a mason in to do the one thing at the exterior of the building that's separate and independent of the building envelope itself. I mean, that's a potential course of action. I'm not recommending it. I'm saying that it's possible because of budgetary and timing constraints.
Well, the Director of Budget and Administration, who also wears the hat of Capital Projects Administrator, happens to be sitting to my right. He's getting an education, and we're going to need to spend some time with him and the mayor on this issue, but we'll probably need to know some more facts. Did you have any thoughts you wanted to add, Mason?
I don't want to, step on the committee's opinions here.
No, we always ask the opinions.
Standard procedure.
I mean, for my approach, it's just cost is key here. And, I know that that's not necessarily what we're evaluating on right now. So just something, but that's something I'm thinking about, obviously, so.
So I'll add my thoughts. The idea of not giving everything to Socotec and having a new firm come in is appealing to me. But I thought that the presentation of Rouse was lackluster at best. I thought that they don't do a lot in-house that I would have expected. I think the registered roofing consultant is also not
Outsourced.
in-house. I just didn't like the idea of having two projects. I think it's gonna be more costly, and we will end up with finger pointing, because this guy's gonna say it's his fault, and this guy's gonna say it's his fault. And I understand what you were saying about Belkner and that whole deal. F.J. Roberts is the name of the company. But my opinion is I would rather go with Socotec on this. So I think at this point, unless anybody has anything to add, that we need to vote. And since we only have two candidates, I guess I'm going to ask for a show of hands. All those in favor of Rouse, raise your hand. All those in favor of Socotec, raise your hand. I think it is unanimous. So therefore, is there anything else we need to discuss?
Just administratively, will Mason be contacting or you, what's the recommendation here? You make a recommendation that goes to the mayor, and then
Yes, but Mason and I are meeting at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, so he's gonna learn a whole lot of stuff. And,
so in terms of timing,
yeah,
it would
we
be
gotta get this,
appropriate.
we gotta get this moving right along. The good news is we have 250 or 285 available, so we can sign a contract. And one of the things we need to figure out quickly is how much more we need and where that's coming from.
Okay, so just a question. If you went to, if a presentation was made to the council that the project had an overall project budget range of between 5 and 750.
Well, no, we can't do that.
No, what I was going to say was, if you said to the mayor, to the council, said, we have an upset limit of 750, which is a not to exceed, could we obtain free cash? That would be the additional 500 that will enable us, and then next year you get it back.
Depends on whether there's free cash available. It depends on whether there has to be a bond issue.
Okay.
So there's a lot of things that are dependent. We are probably going to have to talk to the treasurer about this as well, because I'm not sure where these funds are going to come from. And so I think that we need to initiate that discussion with the mayor as to where the money's going to come from, because if it's a bond issue, you know, we go before the council and we make our presentation, and then they might authorize a bond issue, say for 750, and maybe rescind the 285 we already have. You know, I don't know how that's going to work.
Sure.
And I would say that as many years as we've been doing this, I learn something every day. And so in the end, the mayor and the treasurer and the budget director and the auditor are all going to tell us
How it's going to be, I
how
get
to
it.
march.
Okay, the only reason I even mentioned any of that was, if they have a 49-day, call it 50-day design timeline, plus the timeline to get them on board.
You need to figure this out really, really quickly.
Exactly, that's where I was going with it. You got about less than 2 months to figure this out.
I think we need to know, you know, in 2 weeks what we're doing, so that we can start executing the plan.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So I don't have any other comments, so thank you.
So before we adjourn, I think we have next week off.
We do? Wow.
I think we do.
Next meeting is the 7th, correct?
What?
The 7th is next, correct?
Yeah, we have next week off. So just to give you your preview, in June, our next regular meeting is the 7th. We are going to be here as long as we make sure we reserve the room on the 14th. And at that time, we're going to bring in both of the feasibility studies, the Public Safety Building and the Council on Aging, and we'll figure out what order and how much time each of them needs. The 21st is the School Building Committee, And for some reason, I have the 28th down here, and I think that's because we are getting the bids in next week to do the building study of all 30-odd buildings that we have, and trying to figure out a long-term capital plan to present to the mayor and council, which I think we're supposed to finish by this coming January. The more time that goes by, of course, the less likely that is. But, so I think that the 28th of June may be the night that we interview the applicants.
The 14th.
And so I think on the 7th of June, we may well be shortlisting those to interview. So I think that's what's happening, folks.
Got a busy summer.
Yes.
Else is no.
You know, we used to meet once a month, and now it seems like we meet every Wednesday.
No good deed goes unpunished.
Yeah, but, you know, it's nice to be needed. So, in any event, anybody have anything else? Then a motion to adjourn is in order at 6:55.
So moved.
My
Second.
seconder is gone. Do you want to be?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.